Cutting edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. Kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul's awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. All right, you divine lions and lionesses, this is going to be an epic show with J6 Grandma, Cindy Lou Young. Her and her rabbi and constitutional attorney, Jonathan Gross, are showcasing their book, UNBOWED. When the storm rose, she stood. As Cindy writes, I was saved by a cowboy, a rabbi, and a carpenter. So we are going to reveal this and much, much more on this jaw-dropping story. Is the 1-year anniversary to when she was sentenced. We first wanted to put her in jail for 20 years simply for holding the very flag in the picture you see right here at the Capitol. This is one of the most inspirational stories of our time, and I encourage everybody to share this with patriots everywhere around the world. The book is out right now. You can buy it on Amazon. And let's send a message to the deep state that freedom and God will reign across the land by purchasing this book, driving it to #1 on Amazon. As this woman lost her business, her family, but her faith remained unshakable, along with those of 1,500 other J6 patriots. And here we are now, you divine lions and lionesses. Welcome to the Sovereign Soul Show. I'm your host, Brad Wozni, and you know we stand here for love, levity, and liberty, because after all, laughter and levity is the greatest medicine, but also levity also means to elevate your vibration. And even though I've been a Reiki master, a decade practicing for a quarter of a century, many of you know in the audience that I served what I thought was a country, Canada, as an infantry soldier, then later the province of Ontario as a wildfire fighter, a hell attack fire ranger, as a matter of fact, jumping out of helicopters in Ontario and the Yukon and fighting forest fires was absolutely amazing. And then later, you all know about my little corporate career and the time that I spent, where it was incredible to be at ground zero as rescue efforts went on. And then I was flown up to the Pentagon, and then I was 18 stories underneath it very shortly after they dropped the 3 World Trade Center towers and they shot a missile into the Pentagon. So that, and then also with my sister working at the Pentagon, DIA, NSA, and then being picked up by CSIS for an 8-year career, we've had some incredible experiences in our lives, the Wozni family, just us 2 siblings, to know about deep state activities. She actually woke me up to HARP in 2002, which is incredible. Back then on web crawler, well before Google, you could actually find all the information out. Now, 20 plus years, comes out that yes, chemtrails are real, HARP is real, tectonic weapons are real and whatnot. Well, how does that relate, Brad, to what we're about to speak about today? Unbowed, with my personal friend, Cindy Lou Young, who a year ago yesterday, on November 21st, was sentenced to prison. So here we've come full circle a year later. And I'm going to start here by reading a poem, which I rarely do, which really exemplifies the moment in the show. The poem is called Silence Speaks Volumes, and it's a famous poem by Francis McClelland. And it says this: into the shade of darkness falls emotions of fear and sorrow. Emptiness lingers in the void with no purpose for tomorrow. Yesterday's ghosts haunt every move, disturbing all signs of hope. Confusion casts its cryptic spell as anguished hearts try to cope. As is spun into a web of doubt, the silence bears its weight. Whatever prospects of the truth left wholly abandoned by fate. Perhaps our souls' awakenings penetrate through broken glass, and scattered remnants of their light gently fall within our grasp. The barriers of thoughtful minds recede from outer space, and quiet voices thus proclaim those words revived with faith. Silence Speaks Volumes by Francis McClelland. Dr. Martin Luther King is famously quoted for saying that those who turn a blind eye to evil are just as guilty of perpetrating that evil. And even though I signed up and volunteered, if necessary, to lay down my life for my fellow man in the purpose of serving God's light and what was truth and justice, there are patriots among us who never sign on a dotted line, who never volunteered and pledged their life. Yet some of those patriots, whether it was a William Jefferson to a George Washington to a Patrick Henry, or to the modern day Joan of Arcs of our time and Lee Dundas, and now my friend Cindy Lou Young, these patriots are in the wings. And it's that very moment that they received that clarion call that they said, enough's enough. I'm just going to stand up. I'm going to peacefully speak out against tyranny by a show of faith and support. And so without further ado, I introduce you all to this amazing divine heroine woman, J6 grandmother, pardoned by President Trump, Cindy Lou Young, 1 year and 1 day after she was sentenced to jail by the deep state. Cindy, welcome.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for having me back. It's really good to be here and good to be with you. You've been on this ride from the trial, right? You were streaming it live all the way through. Yeah.
Morning and afternoon and night sometimes. And for what you're referencing, here we are, Lionsgate Portal. This is the thumbnail for that morning show on August 8th last year. And I'm running the live streams. Lisa Schermerhorn, Kevin Hoyt, Michael Jaco, and Bishop Jim O'Connor were live in the courtroom with you on that day, Thursday, August 8th, during the Lionsgate Portal. And why don't you just describe that and this picture in that parking lot, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so we were really kind of feeling good in that moment. Everybody was there, Michael Jaco, Lisa, Bishop Jim, Abby, her dog Storm. Is it Storm? That's her dog's name, I think. And then her horse River, of course. And, we were just having fun in front of the Capitol, riding River. I had a flag. We were riding around. And Jonathan got the call. The verdict is in. And then he kind of let me know I was going to go down on all four counts. But we knew that. We knew that the chances were slim of winning. But, the day prior on the 8th, it felt like we had really fought a good fight. It felt like we had done what we needed to do, but unfortunately not in DC. Not in DC.
Not in DC, not with the deep state, that's for sure. And here you are a year and 1 day later, congratulations, having just released your book, Unbowed.
How about that for timing, right? You couldn't make this stuff up.
No, you really can't. You really can't. And by the way, so we are doing a 100% book promotion here, everybody. This show is about promoting this book, getting it to #1 on Amazon in its category, because you can send a message to the deep state, one that they can't ignore, because freedom and God always reign. And just ordering Cindy's book, even just for the $7 Kindle book, that helps. That boosts the algorithm and gets going. So I'll just put it back here with everybody who's watching once again on Rumble, and then in YouTube, it's below the descriptions. And share this everywhere too, and hit that link and get it out there and get people ordering the book. Definitely powerful, because you're supporting Cindy. You're also supporting the 1,596 J6 patriots. Some of them gave their lives as well, or unfortunately took their lives, and some were murdered in prison. And we as Canadians definitely know all about that. We've seen what they have done at the Canadian Freedom Convoy. We have others in the Canadian Freedom Convoy, one who had to apply for political asylum in the United States because of what is going on, James Bowder. But when we're looking at Unbowed with this book and Cindy Lou Young, who also wrote that with Jonathan, we'll talk about him in a little bit, because there are some incredible quotes here and storylines. But Cindy, the subtitle of the book is Saved by a Cowboy, a Rabbi, and a Carpenter. When the storm rose, she stood. Explain that for everyone.
So Saved by a Cowboy, a Rabbi, and a Carpenter is my first person that I connected with right after I was arraigned on the 4 charges was Kevin Hoyt, who we know as the cowboy. He during his podcast. He always wears his cowboy hat. He's kind of disappeared from the picture right now for his own safety, but he's still out there. I know he is, and I know he's still watching. So he really held me together from the beginning, and also connected me with people like you, Brad. He opened up this whole network of support that I didn't have. He was the one that really pulled it together. And then I had these two, I call them in the book, I call them the pretender defenders, because that's what they were. They didn't have any intention of defending me. They only wanted me to sign the plea deal. And one of our famous quotes comes out of the plea deal offers, but actually it was the second offer I got with Jonathan that I made that quote. But they were like, just sign the plea deal. They've got you on video. You're guilty. Every day I went into their office, it was like I was defending myself to them, and they were just beating me down. And I think you get the drift of that when you read the book. And finally, I had pushed back on them with the Carpenter, which is David Summerall. And David Summerall, for those who don't know, is probably the most knowledgeable person with regard to the J6 timeline, what happened, the video evidence. He's put together documentaries, J6, A True Timeline, Bloody Hill. He's put together several. StopHate.com. If you really want to find out the truth about J6, I really recommend you checking out his website. So I wanted David to be on my team as part of, he was a videographer, and he could come in as an expert witness. And the minute I mentioned his name, and I don't even think I mentioned his last name, they were like, oh, no. You don't get to pick, Cindy. That's our job. And I was like, really? Okay. No. So anyway, we kind of butted heads on that. And then I had been pushing to get rid of, right at that point in time, I was under Judge Tanya Chutkin, the worst DC judge that there is. And she's known for just berating J6 defendants, really beating the heck out of them. So I had said, she was biased, and I wanted her to recuse herself from the case. And they were like, no, that's a frivolous motion. We'd get sanctioned for that. They weren't going to do anything. So the combination of David Summerall and me pushing for that, all of a sudden, they decided that they would move me under a magistrate judge. And looking at it now and assessing that whole point in time, she had just picked up Trump's case. Okay. And so she had me and David Summerall coming in with my case, and Trump, they were trying to get him impeached with his case and get him charged with insurrection and all of that. They didn't want those two cases under her. So she could be like, say, I didn't know that went on, or, you know what I mean? There was no connection there. They didn't want it. So I think that was probably the thing that got me to move under Harvey. And so the pretender defender said, hey, you want to go to the magistrate judge? And I said, well, I'm really concerned because I want a trial by jury. And as long as I can have a trial by jury, sure, I'll move over. So I move over. And then we had another contentious discussion about David Summerall again. This was where, so they said that I couldn't have David as my video expert witness.
And may I just make a point on that for the audience? So this is the man who also broke down all the video. There's 10,000 or whatever. How many tens of thousands of hours of video?
Oh, it's incredible. There's 8 million records in their evidence database. And
so by volunteer, this man did this as his own choice of a patriotic duty.
Yeah.
Not to be silent, not to remain silent. And then to be a volunteer witness, paid his own way to come up from, I think it was Texas, all the way to Washington.
For a chocolate chip cookie.
For a chocolate chip cookie, for J6 trials to be on there. And there was a key point in the trial about the smoke grenades and the smoke gas, and they tried to murder J6ers, and he was able to point that out too. So this man, incredible, the carpenter, David Summerall.
And I will add to this that we're all hearing about that they've decided who the J6 pipe bomber might be, the Capitol Police woman.
Capitol Police chick, yeah.
And you know who told them that in 2021? David.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, they moved me under the magistrate judge, and David had told me to push back on them because they said that this new guy was spending hours looking at evidence. And David said, okay, ask him for the logs. Ask them for the time that they've spent in the evidence database, because every time you open something, it's tagged with how long you looked at it, and when you closed it. So there's tracking. So I asked for it. Immediately, they withdrew from my case. So, yeah. So then I go under Harvey. And now I have no representation.
Hey, Judge Steve Harvey, the same judge who we can't find an oath on public record for. And therefore, if you don't have an oath and you dress up as a man dressed up in a black robe acting like a judge, that's sedition, that's treason, and also malfeasance. And none of those have a parole. Judge Steve Harvey's watching because he's been watching our shows, as you've said.
My friend Jimmy Brett has a good saying for the judges in D.C. They're just prosecutors in drag.
Without an oath.
Without an oath.
Wow.
Yeah. So now I'm under Harvey, and Harvey tells me the first hearing I have with him, all of a sudden on the video screen is this person I've never seen before in my life. And he says to me, you don't get to pick who represents you. You're gonna be with this woman now. And I was like, can I say something? And he goes, I don't want to hear about your attorneys. I don't want to hear what happened between you guys. It doesn't matter. And I said, that's not what I want to say. I want to get my own representation. So he said, well, if you can afford it. And so he gave me like a month to get my own representation. Well, in the meantime, I had gone to an MTG event, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
right,
who happened to be in New Hampshire stumping for Trump. I want to make that very clear to people, because everybody's really coming down on Marjorie right now. And I don't know if you saw, but she's going to resign from the House of Representatives.
Yeah, Trump even posted on Truth last week. He called her Marjorie Traitor Greene.
Yeah, I will never say a bad word about this woman, just based on my experience and mine alone. That woman stood up for me when nobody else would. So you'll never hear a bad word out of my mouth about Marjorie Taylor Greene. And maybe she'll be president next.
Elon was just beside the president at dinner all of a sudden again. So, we're in a special operation.
Yeah.
As well. But let's continue with what
happened. So I meet her. She says, I hope you have good representation. And I'm like, well, not really right now. We'll give your name to my staffer, which I did. And I thought I'd never hear anything. I'm a little fish in a big pond as far as DC goes. Yep. Two days later, I get a call, and it's this man. And he says, hello, my name is Jonathan Gross. I'm calling you at the request of Marjorie Taylor Greene, and I'm an attorney in Baltimore. FBI, if you're on this line, get the hell off. So then he says, I'd like to represent you. And I'm like, I like this guy, And all of a sudden, my world just kind of flipped, because I had real representation, not the false representation that I had. He fought for me tooth and nail.
Yep.
So that started our journey together, and our case got extended so that he could get himself grounded into August, which is when you came into the picture, Brad, and started streaming every day of my trial, basically, to the masses. So that's a little story of how Jonathan came into my world. And, you know, I don't even consider him, he's a brilliant lawyer, but more than that, he's my friend, you know, and he always will be.
Yeah, an amazing man too. So everybody, if you're watching this broadcast, highlighted on the image on the screen, because Jonathan's not here right now, is Jonathan. And this was right after August 9th, right after you were sentenced then. Or what was it that you consider? Because I say sentence, but I know they have their little legalese and I always babble around.
That was the conviction.
The conviction. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now there's a couple of pretty powerful quotes and stories. And just so you know, there will soon be a bumper sticker and a hashtag, and it all goes to Cindy Lou Young because of "Don't shit in a hat," and we're going to get to that, what that means. Or go shit in a hat, excuse me. Mm-hmm. However, before with that setup, and you can read about it in the book, Jonathan on screen here. Well, who's the rabbi that saved you? We haven't covered that part yet.
The rabbi is Jonathan.
Mm-hmm. Amazing.
And in the book, you'll see the power of God and he was a messenger from God. I mean, we would go into trial and he would bring his book of scriptures. He'd read it before we went in the courtroom, and then he would place it right on our table and he'd tap on it, like to remind me, Cindy, this is who's in charge, not this monkey up here. You know?
Yep. Amazing. So let's cover off the story about calling the jurors Nazis in the closing arguments, and something else in this, which is pretty powerful. We don't have to go all the way through it because I want people to read about it in the book. But this part about the Nazis is quite powerful, from a rabbi who is a constitutional attorney, who's representing you for pretty much next to nothing, as well as other J6ers.
He told me the other day, he had at one point in time, he was representing 20 cases, J6 cases at the same time. And I mean, just mine took up hours. I can't even imagine. He said, Cindy, 4 years to me was like a blur, you know? Yeah. I don't know how he did it, but I do know how he did it. God had him do it. Yeah.
100%. 100%. So the closing final comments that he had in the courtroom that day after the conviction, would you mind just sharing that to everybody?
You know, I don't know if I can quote it directly, but you know, he made reference to, you know, the Holocaust and what happened, and that, you know, if we bow to this type of justice, you know, where will we be, or something like that. I'm really doing a bad job at quoting. I think I put one of the quotes in the book, but, you know, Jonathan knows about the Holocaust, and he knows how people were, you know, hurted and mistreated and killed. So it weighs heavy on his heart, and he carries that with him. He carries that conviction with him. And I think when you interviewed him, he had comments of that nature. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
Yeah. So what I'll just do is fill that part in. And there's a famous poem from Martin Niemöller called "First They Came."
That's his big thing. Yes.
Yeah. And so with this, and I'll read it to everybody right here. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Now, Jonathan read that quote in his closing arguments in the case, and on the jury, was also a Catholic priest who wore his white collar as Bishop Jim, our 5-star general for God. And Bishop Jim O'Connor, West Point, 1976, retired U.S. Army major with an MBA, who has also been Judge Advocate General JAG, military JAG, and now a bishop in the Christian Orthodox Church with access to all 777 books of the Bible, not 62 Roman Catholic, whatever it is, 56 or 88 Ethiopian, 777. And Bishop Jim O'Connor was doing exorcisms. He's now completed 46 successful exorcisms, and he's been privy to 55 spontaneous healing miracles. He was doing exercising the entire area of DC and the courthouse every day during the tribunal. I'm calling it a tribunal that you had for that entire week and then leading up to it. And then he's sitting there as Jonathan, a rabbi, and your attorney, a U.S. constitutional attorney, Esquire at that, looks at them, also a Roman Catholic priest in the jury who had just convicted Cindy Lou Young on charges of mischief for holding this very flag at the Capitol with the cross of Christ on it the entire time, and said that poem to them and looked at them and talked about his background and being a Jewish man and knowledge of the Holocaust, and looked at all of them and told them they are Nazis to the entire jury.
And David Summerall, during his testimony, really put him on notice as well. That was the 4th day of testimony. And of course, the prosecution tried to paint him as a grifter and, a friend of Trump, and he was biased and all this. And then Becky, who I call her in the book because I will not call her Rebecca. Becky says to him, she says, and you believe that all these jurors, if they do wrong, belong in jail. You call that justice or vindication. And that would be perfect vindication, right? And David said, no, vindication's not mine. That's the Lord's. But yes, if they've done wrong, they belong in jail. And what about the prosecution? Yeah, if you've done wrong, you belong in jail. And what about the judge? Oh, yeah, if he's done wrong, he belongs in jail. Thank you, Mr. Summerall.
Right on the record. It's absolutely brilliant. So I just want to take everybody now we're doing a quick break, not leaving this. We're going to take everybody over to Amazon. And when you click that link that's in the description, in the chat, that Amazon link, it's a mini, like, tiny URL for Amazon. So if you're in Australia, you have Australia here, in Norway, wherever you are, whatever country you're in, it will go directly to your Amazon in Australia to take you directly to this very screen, which is Unbowed, Saved by a Cowboy, Rabbi, and a Carpenter. You can purchase on Kindle for $6.99. You can buy the hardcover, you can buy the paperback. It's the first edition. It just came out. And of course, you've got Cindy and Jonathan, Rabbi Jonathan, as the co-authors. And it's brilliant. And here's the book summary. When the storm came, she stood. Cindy Lou Young never imagined her search for truth would land her in the center of one of the most turbulent chapters in American history. What began as a stand for faith and freedom spiraled into a battle for her very soul. Through federal courtrooms, media firestorms, and the relentless machinery of power determined to break her. Unbowed is the raw, unflinching memoir of a woman who refused to bend. Guided by 3 unlikely saviors, a cowboy, a rabbi, and a carpenter, Cindy's journey unfolds as both a legal odyssey and a spiritual awakening. Through persecution, loss, and revelation, I'm getting choked up reading this, so pardon me, everyone. She finds redemption, not in the world's verdicts, but in the quiet strength of divine purpose and ancestral love that refused to let her fall. More than a story of survival, Unbowed is a testament of resilience, faith, and the unstoppable force of truth rising through the fire. What we haven't covered is the price that you paid in 4 years. And this people who are new in the audience haven't heard this. Do you mind taking a moment or two to reflect on the price you've paid?
Yeah, if I can. So I ended up, after getting convicted, I was looking at, it was a strong potential I would be going and being incarcerated. Although, I mean, the timing of this was right around Trump's reelection. In fact, they had set my first sentencing date for Halloween, which made Becky very happy, by the way. She thought that was a great date. She smirked. But then as time went on, they pushed that date to November 21st, which we just talked about. But during that time, I had to make arrangements. People don't realize what you're going through mentally as far as preparation. I had to turn over all my financials to my family, my daughter, who's, she's young. She's a young mother, and she didn't need that tossed in her lap for sure. But I needed someone to manage my finances if I were to be incarcerated. And what I was looking at is, if I went to jail, I'm retired, I'm on Social Security, I would lose all that. I would have lost all of my income. I would have lost my apartment because I wouldn't have been able to pay for it. And in preparation, I closed my business because I knew, priority wise, that was like the bottom of the priority list. So closed the business. And, that was a business that was my heart. It was, a healing business. And I miss it. Anyway, I closed it and let it go. And then I got sentenced on November 21st. I knew that I would be incarcerated for 4 months. And when they called me 2 days before Christmas, they said, you need to report on January 28th in Philadelphia FTC. And I was like, what date? And she said, January 28th. And I was like, all right, then. And I no sooner hung up with her, Jonathan called me. He's like celebrating. He's like, you'll never see a day in jail. And because we knew the pardons were most likely going to come. Trump had really said strongly he would issue the pardons day one, and he did. So I had, my pardon was signed on the 27th, and I was supposed to report to prison on the 28th for 4 months.
Amazing. Amazing. And we also didn't touch on the massive persecution. So from Facebook to Twitter, all J6ers, Cindy as well, the most heinous things, they're calling her cunts, all the nastiest, because the deep state turned it on for massive. For somebody who held a flag and prayed.
Yeah.
Prayed. I want to show this video because this was in the intro about riding in on a white horse, and happy to discuss this. Here we are, everybody. This is Cindy riding in on a white horse.
Predict.
Jonathan's right next to me.
All right. Well, right before you got on that horse, you had that photo taken with Kevin and Auntie.
Kevin, the cowboy, and Auntie Crow. Auntie Crow is talked about quite a lot through the book. Auntie Crow is my elder, my spiritual mentor. She's still with me. I mean, she's like a second mom to me. I lost my mom when I was young, and she's stepped in to fill the bill. And, you don't say no to Auntie Crow. You just don't.
Amazing woman. Yeah. So I've got 2 photos of you here on the white horse. Why don't you just discuss that and the power of this message on that day?
Abby, so that's Abby Jones, who I'd never met. I didn't know this woman. She drove all the way from North Carolina, trailered her horse, showed up, and neither one of us knew the impact of this moment and what it would mean to me, to even J6ers. Every J6er, their hearts lifted a little bit when they saw this, because it's like we just went in unbowed, riding river, standing strong. Truth rides a white horse.
Yep, absolutely. And a horse in DC being guided by a descendant of Charles Carroll of Carrollton, right here, Abby Jones, Deacon Abby, who's also a former U.S. Olympic equestrian team member and won gold at the Olympics.
And doesn't she teach or train those Lippingers, those horses that, she's pretty talented.
Yeah, and she's part of the Cajun Navy, so she stood up during those floods and worked with the Cajun Navy to bring food into people and rescue people. So again, remarkable people in Unbowed. Truly incredible. And
when they took note that I rode that horse up there, because when it came to my sentencing, I had a 32-page report from Becky, and she put that I rode the white horse, that I had no remorse, that I needed to come to terms with what I had done. And grovel.
Here, Becky, this one's for you.
There you go.
Right on.
Let's talk about the last plea deal that she put on the table before I got sentenced.
Yep.
So Jonathan calls me and he says, Becky's got another plea deal for you. And I was like, oh yeah, what's that? And he says, she says that you should stop wasting the taxpayer dollars and just plead straight up to all 4 charges, because they've got everything on you. And she won't pursue jail time. And I was like, oh, really? I knew that if I had bit for that, Harvey would have come down and done whatever Harvey wanted. So I said, nah, she can go shit in her hat, because I am not taking that plea deal.
Oh, it's amazing. And with that plea deal, what was the sentence? They were going to say, oh, we're going to sentence you to this, but if you take the plea deal, we'll drop it to this. What were the terms?
No, she said that if I said guilty on all 4, guilty on all 4, she would not pursue jail time. She wouldn't pursue me going to federal prison. But what the other part of that is that, she could recommend that, but Harvey could sit in his chair and say, no, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, which he did anyway. So it was a good thing I didn't take it, Yep.
Most definitely. In the chat on Rumble, we've got Carabuco says, your courage is radiant, Cindy. And Cat for God said, blessings to you from Lee Summit, Missouri.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we've got rural Scotland here in the chat as well. Amazing. Archangelo, it's hard to read the entire handle, says hello and love from Melbourne, Australia. Freaking amazing.
Wow. Hi.
Yeah. Awesome. Lots of hearts popping in here too. So it's fantastic. Indeed. What I also wanted to cover off was the Jeremy Brinster story that you can touch on. Oh, wait. Oh, hang on a second. We've got a special guest. Look who this might be, Cindy. The architect of the Canadian Freedom Convoy, James Bowder.
Hi.
How you doing, Cindy?
Good. How are you?
Not doing too bad, thank you.
I haven't met you yet.
No, you haven't.
No, that'll happen. Hopefully that'll happen someday, Cindy.
Okay. So welcome to the show. Welcome to the discussion.
Like the discussion.
Yeah. So Cindy, I asked James to come on as a surprise guest so everybody can see the show of solidarity from the man who came up with the idea to fill Ottawa with trucks and came up with the idea
you're
to
the guy.
architect the Freedom Convoy. And this is the last Freedom Convoy man left standing, the very one who orchestrated, architected it, and then the team started coming together. And because of that, he is now the very first Canadian to file for political asylum. He's in the United States because they're still coming after him this very moment, this minute, for 15 years at minimum, to throw him away in like a maximum security prison like they did Pastor Artur Pawlowski. And just to show the power of two people, a grandmother running a healing business in New Hampshire and a trucker who's born and raised on the back of a horse in a ranch in Alberta, that you two, divine masculine and a divine feminine, are representative of the Holy Spirit, which has been, as a result of what you have done and stood for, exemplified and helped change the world for the better.
You know, I followed that whole convoy and I was rooting for you. I mean, I was like, yeah, go, watching it. I watched it every day. I followed it all through. It was amazing. And then when they just moved in and started breaking through people's truckers' windows, and then they debanked them, and same stuff they play over here, terror, tyranny.
Yeah, it's surreal when you're on the receiving end of tyranny. There's the price for freedom that we pay.
Yeah, exactly. It's a stiff price, but if you don't stand, like my book says, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything.
Yeah, that's so true.
That's exactly what it says on the back of the book for the audience. At the very top of the back of the jacket, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. Incredible. So James, you've been watching leading up to this, and preempt you coming on here, and it's the first opportunity for you to meet with Cindy, and still living through it in your own right now. What are your thoughts, from watching Cindy's story and where we are here, and then maybe extrapolate that for the audience around the world who is tuning in?
Freedom isn't free, folks, and it's up to each and every one of you. I'm just going to say this. This is something that I keep hearing over and over, is where are the leaders? Where are they? And you know what I got to say to folks is there's no leaders. The leader is the person that looks you in the mirror. Yeah. And when you start recognizing that there is influencers called politicians, there is influencers called social media influencers, there's influencers called mainstream media. But where are the leaders?
That's right.
If you want freedom, real freedom, look yourself in the mirror and step away from the chains that are wrapped around your neck with all of these influencers that pose as leaders.
Powerful. Yes. 100%.
And you'll be the freest person that you could ever be.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Starts within. That's my message. Sorry, my little companions here have a voice of their own at the rarest times.
They totally agree. In YouTube, we've got Trevor Walk says, "Good afternoon, James." On Rumble, we have Karabuko. James Bowder, bravo, James. Thank you so much.
That's freedom right there.
Yep.
Right on. Yeah. Living in exile as a political, having already registered for political asylum in America, because if he goes back to Canada, it's immediately, and there's a countrywide warrant issued for James' arrest. And if anybody has not watched our show from a few months ago, I called it the Man Who Saved the World show, which is literally, you came up from it with the convoy. James, there's one key thing I'm going to ask you to share, which Cindy and most of the audience, if they haven't watched our show or any of the multiple ones, you just did one with Real America's Voice, the CEO, Trennis of American Civil Liberty Alliance last week. But I don't think people have really got to the fact about the download you had. And when that download came in to inspire the idea of the Freedom Convoy, would you mind just taking a few moments and sharing that with people here? Because as the entire through line of the show and what Cindy stands for, you stand for, I stand for, is in God's light, this is 100% divine providence. Over to you, my friend.
I have lost track of how many times that blind faith has changed my life.
Right.
And the Freedom Convoy is something that anybody that participated in the event, I think if you sit down and talk to individuals one-on-one, they say that something hit them in the soul, that they were compelled to do something. And that's not my doing. Okay. I give that credit up to God. And from my perspective, from my eyes and from my heart on what I witnessed in April, when tyranny was just off the rails, like you had to have a passport to go get groceries. Pastors were being ripped out of their churches and being arrested. It was just surreal what was going on. And I wasn't a man of faith, but I became a man of faith through starting to pray to God for the first time in my life, like really, truly praying and seeking solutions and answers and protection. Well, that journey of starting to pray in my 50s led me to a church on top of a hill in the middle of Alberta with Pastor Jeremy Wilcock, and I get baptized in a horse trough. A horse trough. You know, I'm a cowboy. He's a cowboy pastor, and I get baptized in a horse trough. And when I came out of that water, that's when I was downloaded with the vision of filling Ottawa with semis and the name Freedom Convoy that you see behind me here. Mm-hmm. And from there, I started to make prayers and I started to follow God. And that took me on a journey that I'm still on today.
Amazing. I'm honored to meet you. I really am.
Feelings mutual, Cindy. You are an amazing inspiration and one of the true freedom fighters in this world.
There aren't many of us, but there's enough of us.
Yes, there is.
And I'll be very delighted to connect the two of you once we wrap up here in a few minutes and text you both. And you guys can have a long chat together and get to know each other. I think it'd be very mutually beneficial. Most definitely. And to your point about Cindy, like there's not a lot of us, but there's enough of us. You know, the statistic that our mutual friend, Kevin, Cowboy, in the book, right? My former roommate, Kevin Hoyt, here he is on the ground during that day, taking those pictures before you rode the white horse in to hear the verdict of your conviction on November 20th. Well, I guess this was August 9th last year, as a matter of fact. But to that
and let's
point,
not forget Mike Jaco, because he was big on this
too.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, he's in the picture. Michael Jaco, Lisa, Bishop Jim. We've got Abby. Abby just texted me. It's awesome. So she's watching too, which is beautiful. Hello, Abby. So we've got two descendants of Charles Carroll of Carrollton right there in the Capitol, Bishop Jim O'Connor and Abby Jones in the Capitol. And you're waving the American flag, which you were charged with mischief for waving during the J6 event, right? Like they made flags illegal for Canadians in the convoy and after that and all that kind of stuff. But as Kevin had said, going back to the fact that his 16th century, the Free Hoyts of Vermont were part of the Vermont Minutemen who opened fire on the British in the first volleys that's kicked off the Civil War, that incredible Revolutionary War. Kevin said it's about 3.2% of Americans and American families back then in the 13 colonies, plus the 2nd Canadian Regiment from Canada, mostly made up of French from Quebec, including Norman Travers's two ancestors. One was Captain Joseph Traversy, who survived as Washington's messenger in the Continental Army. America, everybody, Continental. I got to throw it in there. And then I just heard Derek and I did a show, and he did the math. It's actually, and get the numbers, 1.7% of all of the fighting men in the colonies and the 2nd Canadian Regiment is what, out of the total population, fought. 1.7%. Remove that decimal, there's our 17. And what do we know about 17? That's God's number. That is God's number. And we see that everywhere. So you two are part of the 1.7% right now. And that, with God at our backs, and he's got this as well, you know, we're absolutely winning. I truly appreciate it, and I'm honored. And I hope that all of you who are watching on Rumble here, on YouTube, or you're listening to this podcast afterwards, you at least throw down $6.99 and get Cindy's book on Kindle. $6.99. She's got hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, that she's lost, that they took from her. They took her GoFundMe, just like the Canadian convoy, right? They stole her GoFundMe. They doxed her. They terrorized her. FBI and other unmarked cars would show up to her apartment, flash their lights in her, park there, bang on the door, you know, prank phone calls, all that craziness that happened to everybody that we have seen. That's all happened. So for $6.99, you're sending a message to the deep state that God and freedom reign with these two, this divine masculine and this divine feminine warrior. For our
and I
freedom.
do want to talk just for a quick minute. I don't know what time we're at. We're getting close.
We're good.
Okay. So I'm still fighting the fight. So I got pardoned, but my convictions, the 4 convictions, are still on my record, which I want vacated. We've found out enough. We know that what they did, it was a complete setup. There were 274 admitted FBI agents in the mix, but that doesn't count the other agencies. I bet you when the end of the day comes, if the truth ever does come out, there was probably over 1,000 of them there, and plus Antifa infiltration as well. But when I was arraigned, I was brought in by the U.S. Marshals in Concord, New Hampshire, and they processed me. And they did the whole processing, fingerprinting, taking pictures of me, putting everything in the database. And I'm sitting there, and then the first thing they did was they put pink shackles on me, and they told me that pink was for girls. They don't get many girls in there. And so I'm sitting there in my pink shackles, and in comes the FBI agent from my case. And he says, oh, we've got one more thing to do. We're going to do a DNA swab. Well, I'm sitting in pink shackles saying this is part of the whole thing. That, as far as I could tell, I wasn't given a piece of paper to sign. I wasn't told I could decline. I wasn't told anything. Come to find out, if you look at the Bivens case, the FBI has no jurisdiction to do any of that. If I was under the custody of the U.S. Marshals, and I hadn't even been arraigned or convicted, they had no right to take my DNA. So I've just filed a lawsuit for $5 million to the DOJ and the FBI.
Awesome.
So
awesome. One other thing we haven't touched on yet, and James, you probably haven't heard at this moment in time, Cindy and I have covered it on a few shows, is when she says she's still fighting, they're still coming after her. The judge in her case, on his own accord, a guy by the name of Steve Harvey, for which we have no record of ever taking the oath publicly, and they refused to provide it when she requested it. That judge is sending her notices directly. The case is closed, she's pardoned, and he's still sending her notices to appear the last time we were on, the very next day.
That was when I was still under him. So he had jurisdiction over me then. And that was when I filed the complaint on Jeremy Brinster, who we haven't really talked about, did we?
No.
Jeremy Brinster was the foreman of my jury. Jeremy Brinster works for Wilmer and Hale, which is a leftist legal, one of the biggest ones in DC. But during the time prior to January 6th, he worked on Hillary Clinton's DNC committee and was like a researcher, paid researcher, wrote briefs against Donald Trump, wrote positioning papers against Bernie Sanders, was probably involved in all of the Russiagate nonsense because he's one of the key people that they zeroed in on for all the WikiLeaks dumps.
And that's what WikiLeaks shows. It shows that he's part of Russiagate. There's over 1,500 pages or something like that with his name on it from WikiLeaks.
So this is my lead juror. And when they asked them the questions, one of the questions, question 30, was, do you have any strong feelings about Donald Trump or his supporters? He didn't answer the question at all. No yes, no, just zoomed by it. So he was never really flagged to either the prosecution, the judge, or my attorney as to being biased. And he just sailed right through the questioning and ended up on my jury and was elected the foreman. And I brought it to Harvey's attention. And Harvey said, well, you should have known that. You should have known all that stuff while you were at trial. What are we supposed to stop listening to the case and look people up on Google? I mean, really. So, he was just, so he denied my motion. But before he denied the motion, I had put it in. We hadn't even had a hearing on it yet. He calls me in for an emergency hearing. And he says, I've looked at your Twitter and I've watched your podcasts. And I know you've said this juror's name and it's against Rule 24.1. A rule is not a law, number one. Okay. And he said, you can't say his name. Jeremy Brinster.
Steve Harvey, Brinster, Steve Becky. So no, it's been nonstop. And just so everybody's aware, Cindy's doing a lot of this on her own legwork.
All pro se.
All pro se, all on her own, getting it done. So for those of you around the world, I mean, this woman is just an incredible.
And Harvey was totally, against canon law. He can't be the prosecutor. He's not supposed to be looking at my social media. He's supposed to be just looking at the evidence put in front of him. He's not supposed to be researching me on his own.
Yeah, watching our shows. Hey, Steve, what's up, bud? How about that sedition and treason? How's that going to work out for you? Karabuko says in the chat on Rumble, she said, good for you, Cindy. Wouldn't mind seeing all those hanging. And I imagine that some of them are going to be spending the rest of their lives in jail very quickly. It's going to come around. But in the meantime, everybody, what you're seeing here on the screen with these two incredible humans who have stood for justice, and nobody paid them, nobody sponsored them, and they said, that's wrong, I'm going to do something that's right, and peacefully, lawfully, and even in the legal system, legally stood up for something and spoke out, and they are still fighting back the deep state minions today. So please support each one of them. James is on Twitter X, Trucker Freedom. I've got all his links in our show. If you go into Rumble here, you can go see the show. Man Who Saved the World. It's also on the Apple Podcasts and everything. And then Cindy Lou, let's get her book to #1 this weekend. The link on Amazon in the chats. $6.99 on Kindle, all the way to a paperback or a hardback cover. I bought 2 books, right? Got the Kindle and got the hardback cover. So can't wait until I can get back to the United States, travel in there and have Cindy sign it.
Yeah.
James would sign it if he's still in the States. Yeah.
Well, I'm never going back to Canada.
Yeah.
No, I can't for the rest of my life. I've given up my country. And I knew that when I came to the States and filed for asylum, Cindy, is that I can never return to home. I can't see my mom. I've lost my truck. I've lost my business. I've lost my house. I've lost my possessions. It's cost me my marriage. Yep. Everything for this fight.
The price is steep. The price is really steep. I've lost.
But you know what?
I come from a small island, very liberal, and these people knew me. They went to school with me. They knew my heart. They knew who I was. None of them talk to me anymore. They don't want anything to do with me. They think I'm an insurrectionist. I'm a traitor to the country. The
Yeah.
quote. I was just looking at the quote. My prosecutor, when she sentenced me, she took it upon herself to say that when the history books are written, Ms. Young will be remembered for the traitor to this country that she is. I think she should look in the mirror.
Becky. Oh. No bueno.
Is that the liberal history books that nobody pays attention to?
Well, they think they're writing history. They really do.
Yeah.
But I just wrote a book on history.
I can tell you that in the history of lawfare and reverse lawfare with respects to some of these cases that lawyers are looking at and judges and crown attorneys and prosecutors, they're the ones that are going to be studying the real law that happens for decades and decades to follow. And I am looking forward to the final day when the gavel comes down and the truth is exposed for what it really is.
Amen.
With respects to just my case alone in Canada.
Yeah.
And the lawfare and the political persecution, and having a judge with one of the most strongest lawyers in U.S., Peter Tinkton, who is my personal lawyer, and Trump's personal lawyer.
He's mine too.
And he's yours. And he is one of the best.
Yeah.
Like, unbelievable, amazing that we have Peter Tinkton on our defense.
Yes, he's a good attorney for sure.
And as soon as I'm given the green light that, you know, all these people say, oh, James, you're a coward. You should have stood and went to court. And I said, well, I'm an alpha. I'm not a follower. I'm going to live my life on my terms, and I'm going to go and I'm going to do this, just like Edward Snowden had to leave.
Yep.
I'm going to go file for political asylum and right the ships of justice for many Canadians to follow for decades.
Yep.
And
you know where you've got to be and how you've got to.
I can't wait for that day.
Yeah.
It's going to be vindicated. And then the very next day, who specializes in lawsuits? Peter Tinkton. And you know what he's suing the government for as soon as we're found that lawfare was committed? $50 million.
Yeah. And do you know what just the J6 saga has cost them already? Billions. Yep.
We will be vindicated.
Yeah.
And that's where the history books, the real history books, are going to tell the real story. Is in Harvard, in Yale, in Oxford, in law schools all around the world.
Yep. And you and I will be part of it.
The military tribunals in Guam, Guantanamo Bay, Greenland, and up in Kananaskis Park, the former FEMA camps. Absolutely. They are underway right now. It's amazing. So, lady, we started with the lady. We will finish with the lady. James, your final comments to the audience and anything else that you'd like to do. And if you, as well, including prayer, if you'd like to. And then we'll go over to Cindy for a final wrap up and a nice shamanic blessing.
Just everybody, hand up all your fears to God. He's the one that's in charge, really. And treat each other with respect, be humble, and live your life. That's how we all win. Stand up and be free, and be the freest person you can be in front of the mirror with God as your shield. That's the best message I can give.
Pretty great message from a man who ignited the movement to save the world. Incredible and honor, James.
And if I could be in front of you, Cindy, I'd give you something that we started up in Canada called this Big Bear Hug, and I'd give you one of those. And that's heart to heart.
Yes. Thank you. Right back at you.
God bless, sweetheart.
Yeah.
So just in closing, one of the quotes in one of my chapters was Matthew. I forget which exact verse it was, but the book is kind of threaded with that verse about that only God can move a mountain. And, in my case, God stepped in and he moved the mountain. So we've just got to keep our eyes toward God, toward heaven, and just ask for his protection and ask for his prayers and ask for his strength. And we'll all make it through this. I know we will.
You got
Amen.
it. Amen. And so it is. We'll see you all next time, everybody. Unbowed on Amazon, anywhere you are. Minimum 1 book. Order now. God's watching. God bless.
Thank you.